Earlier in the life of the Friendship is Magic fandom, there was another fan game with a premise a lot like Weather Factory Meltdown's premise, in that you could play as any one of the main six and switch between them on the fly. That other game was called Fiends from Dream Valley. Unfortunately, that project fell apart. I emailed the team who made it, and they told me that their ambitions were ahead of their abilities on that project, and the team members have since moved on to other things. Like Weather Factory Meltdown, each of the playable ponies had varied strengths, weaknesses, and abilities. Also like Weather Factory Meltdown, it was a platform jumping game with NPCs you could talk to. Though I added my dialogue system significantly after I released the game, and their dialogue system actually has voice acting behind it, whereas mine doesn't have any sound attached to it. There are some other differences as well, especially in the controls. The way you switch between playable ponies in Fiends from Dream Valley is you hold down the control key, then move the mouse to whichever pie piece corresponds to the pony you want to play as. Then you release the control button and the pony appears. This makes it easy to transition between ponies visually, but unfortunately you can't move and switch characters at the same time, so gameplay more or less stops while you're switching. By contrast, Weather Factory Meltdown lets you switch ponies instantly with a touch of a single button, and this can be done while moving or while fighting. So there are strengths and weaknesses in each of the two game engines. One of the strengths in Fiends from Dream Valley is the artwork. It is way more sophisticated than Weather Factory Meltdown's. There's even an animation for turning around, as well as an animation for turning around to kick when you hit the spacebar. This does slow the game down a little, and it probably would have required a lot of anticipation in any kind of combat. In Weather Factory Meltdown, since it's a shoot-'em-up where the bullets come out of your replica Elements of Harmony, there's really no need for me to animate the ponies in any special stance while they're firing. That makes my game much more fast-paced, though less impressive in terms of the animation, which brings me to my next point. There were very few things to actually fight in Fiends from Dream Valley. Most of the gameplay in the prototype that's out there ends up being exploration, finding and navigating the path to the next event. That might not have been the plan in mind for the team making Fiends from Dream Valley, but it's how it ended up in the prototype. And a downside to Fiends from Dream Valley is that the ratios of what the screen shows are, well, look at it. Don't get me wrong, the characters and their animations are impressive, and as such, being able to see a lot of those characters has its merits. But they take up so much of the screen, and the screen is so zoomed in on them, that often I can't even see the next platform I'm supposed to jump to. By contrast, in Weather Factory Meltdown, the characters are downright tiny, and the camera is so zoomed out that you can see a long ways in every direction, often seeing 2 platforms ahead long before you get there. Both approaches have strengths and weaknesses. In fact, I'm a little bit nervous that when I get into the equipment system for my game so that you can dress your ponies up, the ponies will be so small that whatever raincoats or scarves or other accessories you pick for them will be, well, meaningless, because they're so small on the screen. That is not really what I want. Probably somewhere in between is the ideal size. One sad thing about Fiends from Dream Valley is that once you get into the Everfree Forest, the game slows down drastically. I'm guessing this is because Flash is doing collision detection for the whole forest, whereas in the castle it was only doing collision detection for the single room you're in at any given time. Probably the game could have been improved by segmenting the forest into different, smaller areas. The slowness probably creates fake difficulty since it's easy to lose your footing while jumping up platforms and fall down, which is admittedly pretty frustrating. Compared to Weather Factory Meltdown, the controls are too loose. Also, Weather Factory Meltdown is very compartmentalized compared to Fiends from Dream Valley in terms of the level design. Partly that owes to the fact that Weather Factory Meltdown takes place indoors in the factory, while Fiends from Dream Valley takes place outside in Everfree Forest. Another strength of Fiends from Dream Valley is the fact that it has an actual physics engine. If you look at Weather Factory Meltdown, there is no sense of weight or momentum in that game. Either a thing's moving or it isn't moving. The pony jumps aren't arcs, they are straight lines that change direction when you get high enough. Whereas in Fiends from Dream Valley, the platforms react to the pony's weight. There are objects that aren't using axis-aligned collision detection. The objects actually can spin around, and you can move them freely with Twilight's magic. This is very impressive from a game design perspective, though admittedly these features don't add much to the player's experience. In retrospect, they probably could have added a lot to the player experience. There could have been puzzles that heavily involved stacking or positioning movable objects, or even combat could have involved positioning game elements in just the right way, and it could have been very cerebral and fun. So, all in all, there are a lot of similarities and differences between these projects, and I'm really sorry that Fiends from Dream Valley didn't get off the ground and go to completion. But if anyone who worked on that project is interested in using my game engine to complete their project, I would be honored. Of course, the game engine doesn't have all the necessary features for that yet. Things like event flags to control when certain cutscenes can and can't happen, the ability to add and remove playable characters, NPCs who move or change their behavior or position or despawn after you talk to them, all of those are future development. To be honest, I'm not sure what I should work on next. I'm hoping for some user feedback to give me some guidance on what features to start on next, but in order to have some user feedback, I'll, well, need some users.